Quite a while ago, I went through the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, and I carefully selected the 5 most important verses on each of its main topics. I chose verses that were particularly powerful, verses that conveyed really valuable insights, verses that were full of clarity and beauty. From the 700 verses in the Gita, I ended up choosing a total of 30, 5 verses on each of its 6 main topics. These topics are self-knowledge, bhakti, karma yoga, meditation, enlightenment, and finally, who is Lord Krishna. The verses I picked contain the essence of Sri Krishna's teachings, like the concentrated rose essence that's extracted from fresh flower petals. But the essence of Sri Krishna's teachings can easily get diluted or watered down, so to speak, if I give a long lecture on each verse to explain it fully according to the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. So, in this series, I'll try to explain each verse as briefly as possible, just enough to extract the wonderful fragrance of Sri Krishna's wisdom without elaborating on it too much. If you want to study these verses from a more Vedantic standpoint, you can watch my classes on the entire Bhagavad Gita. I'll leave a link below. The first topic in the Bhagavad Gita that we'll discuss is self-knowledge. Here, the word self has a capital S because it refers to Atma, the true self, your essential nature. Atma is the fundamental reality because of which you exist as a conscious being. In the Gita, Sri Krishna describes Atma as pure consciousness, consciousness that's unborn, uncreated, eternal, limitless, and utterly untouched by suffering. In simple terms, Atma is the divinity that dwells within you. Now, to understand Sri Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, it's really important to know that he speaks from several different perspectives, in several different roles. Sometimes he speaks as Arjuna's friend and mentor, Arjuna's charioteer. Elsewhere, he speaks as an avatara, the 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Sometimes he speaks from the standpoint of Brahman, absolute reality, or Ishvara, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the world. But often he speaks from the standpoint of Atma, pure consciousness. In those instances, Sri Krishna refers to himself as the divinity that dwells within you, and he describes Atma as his own sacred presence in your heart. In the 2nd chapter, Sri Krishna begins to teach Arjuna about Atma. At first glance, this particular subject matter might seem completely out of place on a battlefield. The battlefield of Kurukshetra, where a terrible war is about to break out. But the fact is, Arjuna desperately needs this knowledge of Atma. Why? When Arjuna realized that many of his beloved family members would die there on the battlefield, he became completely overwhelmed by terrible sorrow, regret, and grief. He suffered an emotional meltdown right there on the battlefield. like a panic attack that incapacitated him even before the first arrow was shot. So, to help Arjuna recover from this emotional meltdown, Sri Krishna tenderly taught Arjuna the great spiritual truth that no one will truly die on the battlefield. Even though many bodies will fall to the ground, lifeless, the true inner self of his loved ones will live on, completely unscathed by all the violence. Chapter 2, verse 20. Na jayate mriyate va kadachana nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. Here, Sri Krishna assures Arjuna that Atma, the true self of his loved ones, na kadachit jayate, was never born, never created, na mriyate va, nor will it ever die. Anything that's born is subject to death, but the unborn, uncreated fundamental reality that Sri Krishna describes here is not subject to death. Further, he says, na ayam bhutva bhavitava na bhuyaha. Nor is it the case that Atma, after having been born, will be subject to being born again sometime in the future. That is, Atma is not subject to rebirth. The knowledge that Sri Krishna imparts to Arjuna here is not some kind of abstract philosophical theory. It is knowledge of a hidden reality, the reality of your own true self, Atma. Even though you know that you are a conscious being, you might not know the true nature of your own consciousness. You might not know that consciousness itself is eternal, limitless, and transcendent, beyond suffering. You might not know this because Atma is partially hidden. It's covered by the so-called veil of ignorance. When Sri Krishna's teachings pull back that veil of ignorance for Arjuna, he discovers his true nature, and that enables him to overcome his sorrow, regret, and grief, so that he can fulfill his duties on the battlefield. Sri Krishna continues, I am, this, the true self, Atma, is aja, unborn, uncreated, nitya, eternal, timeless, shashvata, primordial, ageless, and it's Purana, ancient, existing even before the creation of the world. As a fundamental reality, Atma is not like anything else. It's unlike everything in creation, including your own body. To understand this, we often use a clay pot as an example. Clay is the fundamental reality because of which this pot exists. If this pot gets broken, then clay will continue to exist. So too, Atma is the fundamental reality because of which you and I exist, and Atma continues to exist when our bodies die. That's why Sri Krishna says here, hanyamane sharire, when the body dies, at the time of death, na hanyate. The true self, Atma, does not die. It continues to exist eternally. Now, you might wonder, Is all this really a matter of knowledge? That Atma is eternal and not subject to birth and death? Or is it merely a matter of belief? How can you really know for sure that Atma is an uncreated, eternal, fundamental reality? Well, matters of belief can never be verified or confirmed by your own experience. So, heaven, hell, and even rebirth are all matters of belief, because they're outside the scope of your experience. On the other hand, Atma, the true self, is not outside the scope of your experience. Why not? Because Atma is pure consciousness. The consciousness that makes you aware of whatever is happening all around you. The consciousness that makes you aware of your thoughts and emotions. That consciousness is certainly not outside the scope of your experience. In fact, it's present in your experience right now. How? Well, that's exactly what Sri Krishna explains in the 13th chapter. Verse 2. Kshetrajñam chapi mam vidhi sarva-kshetreshu bharata kshetrajñayor jnanam yattad-jnanam matam mama. Kshetra means field, and here it refers to your field of experience, all that you see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. Kshetra includes your body and mind with all its thoughts and emotions. Kshetra includes everything you experience. You, on the other hand, are a conscious being, one who knows all these things, everything that's present in your field of experience. That knower is called Kshetrajña, the knower of the field. And that knower is Atma itself, the consciousness that makes you aware of everything. In this verse, Sri Krishna boldly says, Kshetrajñam chapi mam vidhi. O Arjuna, you should understand that I am the Kshetrajña. I am the knower of the field of experience. I am the consciousness by which everything becomes known. Here, Sri Krishna speaks from the standpoint of Atma, as we discussed before. Not only that, but Sri Krishna also declares here that he is sarva-kshetreshu. He abides in the hearts of all living beings, in every creature from an elephant to a tiny ant. And in this way, he endows all of them with consciousness. Here again, Sri Krishna refers to himself as Atma, as pure consciousness. Then he continues, Bharata, O Arjuna, kshetrajñayoho jnanam. This knowledge of the kshetra and kshetrajña, the field of experience and the knower of the field of experience, that knowledge, yattad-jnanam. This is the very knowledge that Arjuna needs to free him from grief by making him understand the spiritual truth that no one will truly die on the battlefield. Sri Krishna concludes, Matam mama. This is my teaching about the nature of Atma, a teaching that can help us all, just as it helped Arjuna. In this verse, Sri Krishna says very clearly that he dwells in the hearts of every living being. And for this reason, all beings are considered divine. All beings are blessed by Sri Krishna's sacred presence. In the 5th chapter, he shows the great significance of this teaching. Verse 18, Vidya vinaya sampanne brahmane kavihastani shuni chaiva shvapakecha pandita samadarshinaha. In the last line, panditaha, the wise ones, those who recognize Sri Krishna's sacred presence in every living being. Those wise ones are samadarshinaha. They see the very same divinity in all beings. And they perceive that divinity, brahmane, in a pious priest, in a holy person who is vidya vinaya sampanna, one who is wise and humble. They also see that very same divinity, Gavi, in a cow, Hastani, in an elephant, Shunicha, and in a dog, Shvapakecha. They even see the same divinity in a person who eats dogs, that is, in an outcast, mlecha, someone who doesn't know or follow Hindu dharma. The importance of this verse cannot be understated. Through the centuries, Hindu dharma has been badly afflicted by the social disease of casteism, a disease that causes discrimination towards outcasts and towards those who belong to the so-called lower castes. This social hierarchy, called the caste system, does indeed have its roots in the ancient Vedic scriptures. But the Vedas never condoned discrimination against anyone. On the other hand, all Hindu scriptures proclaim the importance of ahimsa, a religious principle that forbids all kinds of harm, including discrimination. Sadly, that social hierarchy became weaponized, to use a modern term, and as a result, it was abused for selfish and adharmic purposes. Based on Sri Krishna's crystal-clear declaration about the divinity of all beings, there can be no sanction whatsoever for discrimination against any social group or person, regardless of religion, ethnicity, gender, or anything else. In the Hindu tradition, all harmful deeds, all acts of adharma, are not blamed on a sinister force of evil or some kind of satanic entity that might influence you. Instead, all acts of adharma are attributed to ignorance. Little boys sometimes fight and hurt each other not because they're evil, but because they're ignorant. They're immature, and their behavior is driven by childish emotions. You have to admit, this observation applies not just to children, but to many adults as well. Now, suppose you were enlightened. Suppose you had personally discovered your true divine nature, and you understood that everyone else embodies that very same divinity. If you were enlightened like that, then what could possibly compel you to hurt someone or to commit any act of adharma? The fact is, adharmic deeds are born of desire, greed, anger, envy, lust, and so on. Of course, all those negative traits disappear when you discover your true divine nature, Atma. Before gaining self-knowledge, you have to use your intelligence and your willpower to consistently follow the path of Dharma. But after you gain self-knowledge, following the path of Dharma becomes effortless, instinctive, automatic. For this reason, Sri Krishna says in the 4th chapter of the Gita that nothing is more purifying than self-knowledge. Nothing is more beneficial or desirable because self-knowledge removes the ignorance that lies at the root of all adharmic behavior. Verse 38. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddhaha kalena atmani vindati. Jnanena, compared to self-knowledge, knowledge of Atma, knowledge of Sri Krishna's divine presence within you and within everyone else, compared to that knowledge, nahi iha vidyate. There is nothing here in the whole world that is sadrisham pavitram. Nothing that is as purifying, as virtuous, as beneficial. Nothing else can bless you as much as self-knowledge because it leads to enlightenment. It results in liberation, or moksha, which the ancient sages described as the ultimate goal of life. But to gain self-knowledge, or any other kind of knowledge, you first have to be ready. You have to be prepared. Before you can learn trigonometry, you first have to learn algebra and geometry. In the same way, before you can gain knowledge of Atma, before you can discover your true divine nature, you first have to be prepared by performing spiritual practices through various kinds of sadhana, like prayer, meditation, and karma yoga. Each of these practices will be discussed in other videos in this series. In the second half of this verse, Sri Krishna describes a completely prepared spiritual seeker as yoga samsiddhaha, fully accomplished or perfected through the practice of yoga, which includes all kinds of sadhana. Swayam, such a person, kalena, in time, with ongoing practice, tat vindati, will gain that knowledge, self-knowledge. Atmani, within oneself. Really speaking, self-knowledge is not found in any book or scripture, not even in the Bhagavad Gita. You gain self-knowledge when you use the teachings of scriptures like the Gita to guide you as you look within yourself, seeking to discover your own true nature. This kind of introspection is called self-inquiry, Atma vichara. Self-inquiry is like a spiritual journey. It's an inward-turned exploration that culminates in the discovery of Sri Krishna's presence within you as Atma, your true self. The problem is, on any journey, including a spiritual journey, it's really easy to get lost. If you were traveling on foot to a sacred temple hidden away in the Himalayas, you can get lost even if you have a map. The Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures are like maps for your inner journey. But having a scriptural map is not enough. Those scriptures are written in Sanskrit, and unfortunately, even the best translations lack the power and clarity of the original. So it's helpful to have the guidance of someone who knows Sanskrit and can help you correctly follow the teachings of the scriptures. But far better than that is to have a guide who not only knows the Sanskrit scriptures, but one who has already followed their teachings to discover what you want to discover. That guide, of course, is an enlightened guru. That's why Sri Krishna says in the last of our 5 verses that the best way to gain self-knowledge is with the help of an enlightened teacher, a guru. Chapter 4, verse 34. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. In the last line, Sri Krishna refers to jnaninaha, those who have gained knowledge, the wise ones. Not mere scholars, but those who are tattvadarshinaha, those who have personally discovered the true self, Atma. That is, those who are enlightened. Those enlightened teachers, upadekshanti te, they will teach you. They will lead you to personally discover what they discovered. They will help you gain jnanam, knowledge, self-knowledge, knowledge of Sri Krishna's divine presence within you as Atma, pure consciousness. And further, Sri Krishna says, Tat vidhi. You should gain this knowledge by approaching a teacher, pranipatena, with humility, with eagerness to learn, and with the attitude of wanting to discover what your guru discovered. Also, you should gain this knowledge pariprashnena, by asking questions. These teachings are a matter for understanding. They're not a matter of belief or blind faith. So, to understand clearly, you have to ask questions. If you merely believe or accept everything taught without asking questions, without critical thinking, then you will never discover what your guru discovered. Also, you should gain this knowledge sevaya, by rendering service to your guru, by giving your guru the support he or she needs. Serving your guru not only has this practical reason, but it also purifies your mind to help you better grasp and assimilate everything that your guru teaches. So, these are the 5 most important verses from the Bhagavad Gita on the topic of self-knowledge. In the next video, we'll see the 5 most important verses on the topic of bhakti, devotion.